Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Tran. I am the Northern California Architectural Sales Consultant for BMD in the Millwork Division representing Marvin. And today I have with me Maria Danielides from Maro Studio. Maria, great to have you on.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be joining you.
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I guess I'm going almost on 25 years in architecture now, but I spent the first 17 years working for a firm here in San Francisco. We actually started out, it was an office in Pittsburgh, and a project brought us out here to the West Coast in 1999, and I've stayed ever since. So about 5.5 years ago, I left that firm to try something different, and it was a bit of an accidental entrepreneurship. So I now work for myself and have been, and it's transitioned from mainly this commercial sector to residential work now, ironically. So here in the Bay Area, I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work with some great clients and through referral, but it definitely has been transitioning from commercial to residential.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and we really appreciate all your collaboration at BMD. So thank you very much, Maria. And I'll just kind of get right into it today. So what we're discussing today is really remodels and different trends we're seeing in the marketplace. So how have things like shelter in place impacted the motivation to remodel?
That's a great question. And I think it's been, there have been basically two responses from my clients in what I would call a kind of precarious time. And I should probably preface this in the sense that the projects I've been working on more recently are for folks who are in early retirement or newly retired, going into retirement. So they're planning on remodeling their home to kind of take them into the next phase of their life. Then there's sometimes a young couple with a growing family, and they might have their home for the first time, and it's San Francisco or in the peninsula of the Bay Area, and they are looking to remodel that would respond to their growing family. And then thirdly, I would have folks who are also sort of independent homeowners, and they either are thinking of making their house a home for longer term. So it might be more of a long-term projection and a bigger renovation to take them into, a decade or more. And so it's a very, very limited or narrow focus of clientele. I should preface that. So those individuals that I've been working with in the last year, now that we're coming upon almost a year for the shelter in place, has been more twofold. They're either somewhat nervous and have a high level of uncertainty or anxiety, so they may actually defer what they had planned. I've had few individuals who had to put their project on hold. But then there are other folks who, because they're working from home, because the kids are working or schooling from home, or they find themselves now just more of a heightened awareness of their surroundings. And so their home, which seemed relatively fine for the hours that they spent on a normal work day or weekends and whatnot, has become more, they just have a heightened awareness of deficiencies, or there might be things like disrepair that is really becoming more of a front burner issue for them. And that could be any number of things: temperature control, noise mitigation, separation, a quiet space. Sometimes it's also just recognizing a dysfunctional kitchen because they're no longer eating out, or they're finding themselves needing to have a lot more space for that kind of activity than ever before. And those individuals are more motivated, but they also have the means to think about those things, meaning that they may have money that they feel they can tap into to pursue those goals. And again, I want to maybe preface that it's a smaller group of people who have the means to think about those things under the circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I can tell you from personal experience, being home and not being on the road or being on a plane or being in Minnesota, I definitely saw things at home and I'm like, well, that's not working. We're going to have to change that. Or that patch of dying grass in the backyard is going to have to get sorted out for summertime. So, absolutely. Now, any specific changes in architecture that you see?
I don't think I would call them changes per se. I just think it's more about implementing things like privacy or noise control, letting in light, good lighting in general. Maybe it's artificial as well as natural light. Um, Things such as ventilation and views, or just comfort level in where where you are, whether it's working or schooling the kids. It's again, I think bringing those elements that are not new ideas per se, but they're more of what I feel are more appreciated as best practices in architecture. And I sense that clients are starting to appreciate suggestions that maybe they didn't think of before as being as critical, but now they're starting to be more aware of it. So I think that's, again, maybe just more of implementing what I would call our best practices. And then there's certainly for certain individuals or clients, they're focusing on spaces that maybe they don't have right now, such as getting that proper game room to escape with the family, or maybe they do need a glorified office space in their home, because if they're in tech, they may actually feel like they're going to be working from home forever, because that seems to be a trend in their workplace. But I do see that there's a focus on sometimes spaces in their homes that are additive in nature or modified relative to those things that I mentioned before, which is a heightened awareness of deficiencies
Mhm.
or a lack thereof. So, and then I also would find that outdoor spaces, landscape improvements, certainly if they've got a backyard, um, there I see an uptick in outdoor improvements. I'm sure it's because they wanted to take advantage even more so being outdoors and gather outdoors in their backyard, as well as get you know um, the kids being outside versus under normal circumstances, maybe at the playground, what have you. But that's led to, an uptick outdoor kitchens, things like that, have perhaps grown in some popularity. But then again, they're not new ideas, but they definitely have become more of an incentive.
Mm, yeah, understood. Now, with the current climate, and I mean, real estate wise, we're at a record low, I believe, interest rates. Do you think there's kind of a rush to remodel? People are refinancing and putting money back into their homes?
That's a great question. I haven't had a lot of real specific examples of insight into that, but I'm going to make some guesses perhaps, or share some impressions on that. I think there's been, not necessarily going back to the first kind of question about whether they're motivated to remodel. Some people are actually feeling like they're not in a rush to remodel. They may be considering it, but they're also you don't want to live in place during a big remodel. So they're considering like where they would be when all this work might be taking place. So I think that kind of doesn't necessarily rush them into anything, but um, I would suspect that the low interest rates are an incentive, for sure, if there's construction loans or things of that nature. And then I I think related to interest rates, I might even call out the fact that I've been seeing more first-time home buyers or homeowners. They're trying to get into the market for the first time because of those low interest rates. So they're shopping around in the Bay Area for a home or to buy a home. And I have been seeing more people approach me in that capacity as well. And so what they're finding though is that they most likely are looking at something that may have fallen into disrepair or may need some upgrades. So they definitely need to factor that into their budget.
Hmm. Now, something I've seen as kind of a trend since the shelter in place was an increase of accessory dwelling units, ADU projects, and within the Bay Area. Have you had any experience with that?
I have. Are you, but you're seeing an increase during the last year?
Hmm.
Okay. So accessory dwelling units became more popular prior to COVID, especially in the Bay Area, because there was an incentive because of our housing crisis, for one, that our own, not to get into the weeds too much, but our own planning department and our own building and planning departments here in the city took initiative to promote accessory dwelling units where they may not necessarily have been permitted for zoning beforehand.
Hmm.
So there was some incentives and prototypes of um, to to get folks thinking about that or legalizing something that may have been illegal before, whether it was an extra in-law or a space that was an apartment but just needed to have proper modifications done to bring it up to code. So I was doing those maybe 5 years ago, actually, and seeing that uh, trend, I guess we can call it, basically through folks though who have a very conducive property to undertake that as an option, because it's not an easy thing. It shouldn't be underestimated that it does take quite a bit of planning and design execution to make those accessory dwelling units work. And so I did do like a couple of those types of projects here in San Francisco within the last 5 years. And it was mainly also because folks really find the incentive to have passive income. But I think it probably also at times had a sense of being multi-generational in nature, so that I do get clients who also want to think of it as initially maybe an extra guest room or space of that nature um, for friends and family to visit, but then it can be something that they want to build in so that it legally is an accessory dwelling unit and not just a guest room, so that they have a choice to move forward in renting it, or perhaps somewhere down the road, mom or dad come back and live with them and want their own separate space. Or I could also see the adult child coming back from home, back to home from college or between jobs or what have you. And that also is a reality for, I think, probably a lot of people in the last, not just COVID, but probably in the last 10, 15 years, since the recession even of 2008. So there's good long-term strategies related to those ADUs, but they're not simple by any means, and need proper planning, and they're not inexpensive, especially in the Bay Area. And so it is a long-term investment.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your input for our
Mm-hmm.
Remodeling and Trends webinar. So thank you very much for your
For
time.
sure.
Maria, I will speak to you soon. Have a wonderful day.
For sure. Thank you so much, Alex. Talk to you later.
Welcome.
I'm here with Andrea Holmes with Therma-Tru Doors. She's the National Account Manager for Therma-Tru. Welcome, Andrea. Appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me.
So give us a little background about yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do for Therma-Tru.
Yeah, so I'm the national accounts manager, really focused on the remodeling and retail channels, and live in Nashville, Tennessee, and have for 20 years, and have also been in the industry for about 17 years. So been through a few things and seen some ups and downs, definitely.
Yeah, and this is obviously a unique time for all of us right now, and I know you're seeing a lot of that. But let's just jump in right away and just talk about the remodeling and the trends that are going on there. How do you see the trends going in the remodeling? Do you see it stronger now because of COVID and the resulting economy? That was always my fear is stepping into this year knowing what's coming and thinking, wow, things are really going to lock down. It's going to be a tight year for us, but we saw it a little differently. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have definitely seen strong demand, and actually stronger than pre-COVID. I think with people being at home more, there's definitely been more DIY projects, and then a growing number of do-it-for-me projects as well. Some of the research that we've seen has said that people pulled forward projects, maybe that they were planning for a year or two from now. Maybe they had been saving for that, but because they did have some money in savings, also had the time and the ability to do it, that they just decided now was the time. So
Right.
the forecast, really, what we're seeing though is that there's likely to be more do it for me, because a lot of those DIY projects are now done. So that may be really for the near term what we see more of.
Right, right. Very interesting. And obviously, entries doors are a big part of that. When you're doing some remodeling, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, about changing curb appeal and doing things to increase the value of the home. But one of the challenge I know you're seeing it too, is just this challenge of communicating. And you can't do those in-home consultations as much anymore, and depending where you are, even less. So how are you guys working around that? What kind of tools have you come up with, and what are the things that you're doing with as Therma-Tru?
Yeah, so the remodeling companies that we work with, we already had existing digital catalogs that were available. Now, what we are seeing is those companies are utilizing technology more. They're doing, instead of those initial consultations in the home, they're having those virtually. They're sending links to information that the customer can browse online, kind of do some selections, if you will, and narrow down their choices. And then really until the selection and measure visit is needed, that's really the time that they would actually schedule something and be in person. So we're definitely seeing people utilize that technology. And, I think we've probably jumped forward a few years in technology in our industry just in this short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at your background right now, we were talking about how you guys created this virtual experience, which is huge right now. The technology. You talk about the technology. It's really changed how we've done it, and now you were getting more and more comfortable with doing face to face over a camera like this. And so talk about your virtual experience a little bit, because I think that's a great tool for people to dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. You can visit it through the thermatru.com website. It's actually on the homepage. You're able to click through and just put in an email address and some basic information. It really is providing a broad experience that is introducing new products, really reframing our premium product, our classic craft doors. Really cool features in being able to change out some of the facades on the home from our 5' product, and then swapping out the doors to give a look in different styles of homes. So there's also a great amount of information, tools that can be used to help sell, and then really some information for training and things that you could come back to over and over.
Right, right. It's really good, and I love the fact that you can do that. It's interactive, and that's that's the key right now. And as things start to open up, you get that direct connection a little bit more and more. But this is such a good thing for at least a baseline start, and you can have those conversations, and it's a real unique way. So, really great work there. I really love that. So, you know. The other thing that we're facing, obviously, are delivery times. With material suppliers and things on down the line being delayed. And how are you guys addressing those things? How are you handling that? And what's your key on that?
Yeah, I can't give enough credit to our team. They are diligent every day looking for the ability to maximize capacity and balance that with the demand that we have. They're looking at all options that are available. So one instance, one of the things that they did is we converted what was a steel door only production line so that line can now toggle between making fiberglass doors and steel doors. So they're looking at every option for what can immediately be done in the near term. And then, our parent company, Fortune Brands, always supports the growth that we have. And so we always have the longer term plan for how we maximize production. But, our plan is running 6.5 days a week. That other half day is just for maintenance. And so yeah, they're doing all that they can. And I've been very impressed with what they've been able to do in juggling all the things they're looking at.
Yeah, that's super. That is just a beast for us right now, all to tackle. And it's not just, it's obviously not just Therma-Tru, it's everybody across the board that's facing this right now. And so, keeping that communication alive is big for us. And knowing, setting those expectations and trying not to get too aggressive on the expectations, but just be honest. And I think that's appreciated. So let's talk about trends a little bit. And the green, one thing maybe not related to COVID, but really on everybody's mind, is the green side of things and more efficiencies and things like that. And tell me some of the advances, some of the things that you've done to to address those kind of things.
Yeah, so Therma-Tru pioneered the fiberglass door years ago. And so, fiberglass doors have a higher R rating, which, is obviously very appealing when it comes to the green message. Really is that measure of insulation is drastically different in fiberglass doors than it is in wood doors. So, we were a little bit ahead of the curve, I think, from that standpoint, even before the green movement took on. Therma-Tru does take it a step further, though. And so we go to market with a full door system approach, meaning that all of the doors, the glass, the components that go into the door unit, they are all engineered and manufactured to work together. And really the meaning for that being, for a tighter seal, for less leakage, for better performance. All of those things are, made to work together instead of one manufacturer making, the seals and someone else making the hinges. So everything is made to work together. That just allows us to have a better performing door. The other thing is, so often it is kind of placed to the side that installation is so important when it comes to efficiency. And Therma-Tru saw the need in making sure that doors are installed properly, creating that tight seal. So we actually created a certified installer program that trains installers on the proper installation of Therma-Tru doors. So there is a course that's available, and through those courses, an installer can be certified and they can promote that, for their business. And that just means to us that we know that more doors are being installed properly.
Right, right. And I know Mole Millwork, who you know is a certified installer,
Yeah.
and that program's been very good for them for their installations. And I know they do a ton of
Yeah.
door installations. And it's nice to have that factory backing behind that too. And when you do it consistently over time, you do things the right way. So that's a great program that you guys have.
Yeah.
The other thing that we talked about a little bit was going into remodeling, some of the trends we're seeing is people are remodeling their space now. They're building their castle. Their castle is their home, and man, we're stuck here. We want to do something different. But there's an investment with that, and price always comes into it, and that's always the debate. What do I want to spend on this? But I think you guys have some great statistics on what the value is in doing an entry door and the curb appeal and things like that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thermatru completed a proprietary study in 2017, and the response, the research showed that a new Thermatru door can increase the home's perceived value by 4.2%. So on average, that is $18,750. When it comes to curb appeal, that front door is such an important part. And clearly you're not likely to have the cost, be around that $18,000 range. So you're getting a great return on making a replacement in that area. So, it's very important that, and the perceived value being that, anyone can drive by the home and that's what they think that value is. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I think you quote a stat. We may show it here, but it's the improving curb appeal is one of the top 5 most valuable upgrades you can make, and that's from the National Association of Realtors. So that it seems like such a simple thing, but it's not always thought of as that impactful. You think about people doing drive-bys, and you drive by a property, or everything's online now, and you see that first picture you see is of the front door and the front face of the house, and it becomes so key to that. So even as we see the trends, of people remodeling and doing things inside the home, that's a great addition to it as well. That it's an investment for down the road when they are ready to sell, they are ready to change, whether it's upsizing or downsizing, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's great. Andrea, this is great. We've got some great information here, and we'll share this information as well on the website. So if people want to go and see some of these statistics and talk about some of the things to homeowners that they're talking to along the way, these are great selling points for just doing the right things right now. So I appreciate your time. This has been great, and good luck to you moving forward with Thermatru.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm here with Eric Mason, and he's the architectural marketing manager. Excuse me, let's try that again. All right, I'm here with Eric Mason now, and he is the architectural market manager for Marvin. And Eric, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Glad to help.
It's great. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where do you come from? What's your expertise?
Well, Mark, I grew up in southern Iowa, so I was a son of a shop teacher. Always grew up working with my hands on summer projects while he was on a summer break. So just naturally took a liking to being involved in the trade, and moved into the contracting world as I got out of school. And then as time progressed, I went to work as a millwork sales rep. Got involved with windows and doors, and ended up working for Marvin. So I live down in the Kansas City area in a little historic town called Liberty, Missouri, on the northeast side of the Kansas City metro area. And it's good for me because really my background is, my passions are historic preservation. I'm really involved in historic work, along with new construction builds that we do, supporting architects. So I kind of still get to get my hands dirty and get involved with some design elements and some construction elements, and yet be able to go home at the end of the day and hang my hat.
Yeah, it's great. And I know you work with Kansas City Millwork and Mole Millwork quite extensively down there. In fact, you get a little history with Kansas City. millwork. But we appreciate all you do, and this would be a great conversation from a perspective of manufacturer and what Marvin is doing and what you're seeing. So let's just jump right in and let's talk about some of the trends that we're seeing. One big thing, especially that we see with windows and doors, is these indoor outdoor spaces. And let's just talk about that a little bit. What are you seeing that's kind of evolved with that?
Yeah, we see with the design community really wanting their clients to be able to blur the lines from the inside and the outside. These large scenic doors where you're opening up a space, maybe it's right to a patio or a lanai, and just being able to enjoy the outdoors, but yet not be in the outdoors. Maybe it's a screened-in structure. No lips or very low lips on the doors, so you have a seamless transition from the floor to your threshold, or your door out to your deck, or whatever that space is out there. So we do see a lot of that. Here in the Midwest, people like their fresh air still, so it's nice to be able to maybe unwind, or maybe you do a Zoom or a Teams meeting from your lanai area out, enjoying the breeze as the weather's warming up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I guess it always changes. It's a little more seasonal for the Midwest as it is in California, but we're seeing a lot of that too, and just it seems like obviously California and these warmer climates, and maybe even Dallas a little bit, except for the humidity maybe, but they're used to opening these things up, right? But you're seeing more of that down in the Midwest.
We are, we've got some, these larger format doors with screen options too. And that's the biggest thing is, being landlocked here in the Midwest, we might see a picture from Howe's of this gorgeous West Coast house with, this ocean view, whereas we don't have that. But apparently we always joke they don't have bugs out in the West Coast either. The bugs all stay here in the Midwest. So it's really important to be able to open up that space, but yet have a screen to keep those bugs out. We do get a fair amount of bugs.
Yeah, those and the spaces are just beautiful now, and and people, we talked a little bit about people being more confined now, and some of these stay-at-home orders, and no matter how you feel about that, sometimes that's a real challenge for people. You got the kids at home, you've got you at home, you're always at home. So what's kind of happening with that? How is that changing the remodeling side from your perspective?
Well, we've also seen, some of these large scenic doors going in, but also maybe it's that when it comes to a remodel, there might be an addition. Maybe it's an outdoor studio that's not connected to the home. You could see maybe it's time to add that garage and then put an office space or a workspace up above that, or a meditation space, just some place to get that separation that maybe you typically got from going to work, or from the kids got from going to school. We all love our families, those of us that have them, but sometimes it can be really hard in the same room all the time. So just getting that separation and that be able to focus on your work and get the task done at hand is been top of mind with a lot of our conversations lately.
Yeah, I agree, and we're seeing that as well. And I think the other thing that we think about when we think about the trends that are happening now is some of the consciousness of the green, and maybe it's not so much green as it is the efficiencies. Maybe it's both. Of course, California, they've got some restrictions on that you have to comply to, but the Midwest doesn't really have those. But we're seeing some of that too. So talk about some like the air quality issues and things that you've seen on that side of things.
I do get to hear quite a bit about homes are so much tighter nowadays. There's techniques to open them up. The windows and doors are more high performance. They're using items like a closed cell insulation, where now you're putting an air exchanger in to help bring in some of that fresh air. Whereas the old balloon framed homes that would quote unquote breathe, you had a little bit a better air quality to them. Now, the dead of winter, those balloon frame homes get really dry because you're not holding the humidity in that the mechanical system is creating. But you're seeing a lot more of that conversation, and then you got to have the fresh air that gets introduced. It seems like we still see a fair amount of people here that want to open their windows and bring in that fresh air when it allows. You get a lot of cooler nights during the summer. Even you can open up, ventilate, and then help control humidity. That's the biggest thing, is keep the humidity down. But having that fresh air is still very important. Operating windows and doors that bring in fresh air is still always, almost 90% of our conversations, somebody brings it up.
Right. And we had a conversation a couple of months ago with a builder in Colorado, which is where I am, and he's building up in Castle Rock, which is you're up around 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet above sea level, the first thought is, they wanted to do an indoor-outdoor space, and they wanted to open it up. And he's like, and he got a lot of feedback. No, you can't do that in Colorado. You can't. But even here, we get mild weather in the winter, and certainly in the summer, there's good opportunities there too. So I think we're seeing that in a lot of places as well. But one word that you and I talked about a minute ago was embodied energy. Talk about that, and how's that impacted? What does Marvin? How does Marvin play a role in that?
Well, it does seem like when people start talking about a green building technique or being more environmentally friendly, the one thing that we discuss is the embodied energy with our fiberglass products. You start comparing it to maybe a vinyl, which is a petroleum-based product. Fiberglass comes from silica, basically. It's a base component. So plenty of silica available around the world, and it's a green building technique. I mean, you're forcing some products into a die, creating exothermic heat, and then it's coming out a pultruded piece of fiberglass. So we're not taking that out of a petroleum-based product. We're not shipping that on containers around the world to be recycled or remelted. And so it's a very environmentally friendly way to build a window and door. If you think about fiberglass too, it's the same component as glass. So any of your expansion and contraction rates are virtually identical. So we've really kind of engineered any seal failures or issues you might have down the road, especially with these bigger door openings that we're asking you to do nowadays. It's good to have a nice stable product that won't move in the between the hot and cold cycles in winter.
Right. And that's great, because you've got it from both sides of that too, right? You've got the efficiency side from, when it's installed and when it's performing in the home, but you've also got it on the manufacturing side, and you've got those green aspects of that you just talked about of the fiberglass. So that's great. And maybe the last thing, just a little touch on, we talk about the oasis at home, right? We talk about, people are remodeling, and we're seeing a little bit of this shift where they're not necessarily looking for a new home build. Now's the time to just stay at home. Let's do something with the home, and we talked about that a little bit, where it's the family all in one place. But in some cases, whether there's a stay-at-home order or just people are trying to confine a little bit more, stay a little bit tighter at home. Now you've got this space that you're staring at four walls constantly. And they're kind of moving in that direction. What are you seeing on that?
Well, we've seen plenty of maybe it's not a full-blown remodel, but they need to add some structure, because that typical sliding patio door off the dining room that goes out to a deck, maybe that's going to get taken out. That's 6 foot wide. And they're going to put in a 16-foot wide, 8 foot tall door. Have a moving wall of glass now, whether it's a biparting French door or a multi-slide door or a bifold door. So we see a lot more of that. Maybe they expand the deck, but then you've got all this glass that's letting in this light. Again, we're blurring that line between the inside and the outside. So that encompasses structure. So it's a remodel, and we see a fair amount of that where maybe in the past it might have been easier to just pick up and move and find another home. It does seem like when people decide to stay put or in their house a little bit longer, we start doing projects like that. So we don't do the whole house. It's not a new build, but we might get a couple of doors out of it and a window or two.
Right. Yeah, it's really good. There's, a lot of changes. And it's interesting to see. And we talked earlier about, going into 2020, and when things started locking down, you really started worrying about the economy and what was happening. But last year was a strong year for the building industry, and, remodeling was a big part of that, I know. And so it's good to see things to continue, and people are able to do these things. And this is a good focus for businesses that we're talking to. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's great, Eric. Hey, I really appreciate the time. I wish you luck, and it's great to work with you. And thanks for spending the time with all of us here today.
Thanks, It's great to talk to you, Mark, and have a great day as well.
All right, thanks. All right, I'm here with Rob Ross, and he's the principal for Trad Building Design out of Boulder, Colorado. And welcome, Rob. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, great to be here. Glad to answer some questions.
All right, good. Well, let's start off by telling us a little bit about your background. What do you do? Tell us a little bit about Trad Design and Build.
Yeah, so I'm an architect. My business partner is a general contractor. So we are a true architect-owned residential design build firm in Boulder, Colorado. The bulk of our work is remodels and additions in the county, though we do custom work as well, both accessory dwelling units, custom homes in and around Boulder and Boulder County. And Trad is a little over 5 years old now, but collectively, Dan and I have both been working in the Boulder area for since the mid-early 2000s. So 2006, 7 for Dan, I think 2001 for me. So, we've been doing a lot of work here on the Front Range and in our area for quite some time. So a lot of homes have seen our our influence and touch, both as working independently and together. So.
Yeah, that's great. So Boulder, a kind of a unique area for those who may not know. Boulder's just west of Denver, basically, and is that whole area around Boulder, between Boulder and Denver, has just grown, and a lot of things around built around the 60s and 70s, the old bi-level and tri-level that was so popular for so many years, and so when we talk about trends in that area, that's something you've really worked with, is taking those older designs and just giving them new life, giving them a contemporary feel. And just talk about that a little bit, about what you've done with that kind of market.
Yeah, Boulder, like so many other cities around here, has such a large collection of housing stock from that time frame, and branches included. And but the bi-levels in particular are always their own unique challenge to improve architecturally, make them unique, make them special. Take something that hundreds or thousands of them have been built, and give them a new life and character moving forward. So they particularly poor entries, many other features, low ceilings and things like that, or some of the baseline improvements. And then on the green building side, having and doing work in Boulder and Boulder County, we do have some of the more stringent, rigorous green building codes in the country. So even when you're tackling, updating something like a bi-level, the goal isn't only always to, architecturally improve it and get something the client is excited to have in the end. A big part of that is, what are we doing to improve, the energy efficiency components to that, and, everything from, windows and doors to mechanical systems.
Right, and I know you get into the kitchens as well, and some of the designs with that, and you have your own cabinet shop, and it's just interesting. And some of the things we were talking about today is, how people are spending a lot more time in the homes. They're moving in with their business, with doing business with home. You've got kids in the home more often, and trying to spread out. And I got to spend some time with you last week on one of your projects, and really, you guys did a great job just opening up some of that area, which is, some we're seeing it's coming more compartmentalized, and where we want to section off the office space and give it some privacy. But you opened this one up a little bit, and was that something that that's kind of been a trend that's going along around for a while? Do you see that changing, or is that something you continue to move with?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is demand for more private space, giving people and kids working from home. And it's interesting, a lot of our projects currently under construction were planned either before or early days of COVID, before some of that influence overly dictated what we were doing in these homes. Bi-levels in particular, ranches, opening them up from some of that compartmentalized design that we saw in a lot of these older homes still is very popular. Low ceilings that are just under 8 foot or at 8 foot, kitchens that are closed off. Opening up those living spaces still is a very common trait, trend, and detail that we do for folks. Vaulting ceilings in them is a very popular thing that happens and really transforms those spaces. But as far as dedicating, quiet space, that's varies client to client, but there's always that drive for the guest room / home office that can be closed off, or thinking through, where somebody can work. We still do put in, little cubbies or niches or dedicated workspaces on projects. They're not always as private as maybe they would be now with so many people working from home. But it's not that uncommon across different industries and tech industries where people do often work from home. So, home offices have been part of how somebody uses that space or a multi-use flex space. But recently we did a full interior remodel, lost a bedroom, to kind of help rearrange and open up that space, but created an adjacent home office nook, if you will, to give them that space. Now it's not private and quiet in that solution,
Right.
but we were kind of looking at that from a different perspective earlier on. So now we're in final paint and things like that.
Yeah.
But moving forward, people have asked, inquired. I think a bigger challenge is people try to find solutions for working at home with the constraints they have, but easier to think about, and then the reality of doing that much work to your house and disrupting it while you're still living in there has been a challenge too.
Right, sure. Well, and you mentioned the green building, and the codes in Boulder are generally more stringent and more California-like than maybe even like in a market like Denver. But and I guess one thing we talk about is remodeling, and how there's a common thing to scrape and rebuild and just start over. But you're taking the bones of the house, and so this is kind of an economy of efficiency that is that green building thing. Is you're keeping intact the materials that are there, the baseline materials, and building from that and turning into something that's completely new. The home that I visited with you last week, it's a bi-level, and it was what, 60s, 70s, somewhere in that range. It was
range.
built.
I remember the exact year.
And so really that's a green part of your process right there, isn't it? Just starting with the initial structure.
Absolutely. I think homeowners sometimes get a little bit of a mixed thought across the industry from whether their house should be torn all the way down and starting over or not. And a lot of that is market and budget driven too, for really how much change you're doing to a home. But what we're doing are often the pop top, the new master suite on top, or some additional square footage or space to add to those homes. And the bones are often adequate. Lumber and things that were built back then sometimes were better quality. They're great to work with. What we do pull out, we recycle, but it's almost more interesting sometimes working with the constraints. It gives you a different, more fun design challenge. Reaching towards whatever that client's end goal is. Do they want something modern out of a bi-level, or are they looking to bring it more into something more of a traditional role, a farmhouse or a craftsman type thing. So, taking a bi-level, which is a pretty generic, transitional builders, floor plan, and, trying to apply some style and character to it, it's a challenge. It's a fun design challenge. And, I think saving those structures, especially foundations, first floors, we're often changing roof lines. So, you might scrape a roof off, but there's still a fair amount of wood and products saved in that home. And as we've seen over the last year plus, I mean, even in the last few months alone, lumber pricing has skyrocketed. So
right.
What we can leave in the house is that much less that we're having to replace,
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's a big change we've seen this last year too, I guess, with COVID, is the pricing and availability. Lumber has just been a real challenge. So that's a great point that you mentioned there. And the other thing is, you consider some of these older homes and old windows and things, and changing them. Like this home you just did was you put Marvin in there, and I imagine some of the efficiencies are part of that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this home in particular had, I think, the majority of the windows, with the exception of a few, and in addition, it had sometime in the last 25 years, were still single pane aluminum windows down in the basement, maybe some double pane vinyl or aluminum upstairs. Still, it was a bit of a hodgepodge. So, coming in with a full, new window package it's a big aesthetic improvement, but the energy improvements also are great. I'm one of my favorite window lines to use in sort of our market of remodels is that essentials line for Marvin. The limitations aren't that bad. You really can get a great combination of windows that can be molded together and get a great aesthetic. And the U values that we're targeting now are getting more and more attainable with improved glass coatings and things like that, which isn't Marvin specific. That's really more glazing type.
Right.
But the fact that we can get these additional coatings at an additional cost depending on how it's driving the project and the green building requirements,
Right.
but getting down to a 0.27, a 0.26 U value on something which is just our baseline requirements now for anything that we're doing on a prescriptive path type review. When you get into a performance path where an energy rating is involved, and that gives you a little bit more flexibility on, one door can be over, or it's more of a collective, snapshot of the whole house. But a lot of times when it's a one and done, we need those resources, and Marvin and some of the other folks that you guys work with, or have products that can meet those low U value demands in the market now.
Yeah, and that's something. Obviously, the trend continues to move more in that direction. For the green aspect, but also the efficiency aspect, and people appreciate that more. Being able to keep your heat and keep your cool in the home where it's supposed to be when you need it, right?
Sit next to the window on a cold day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, this is great, and I love how you guys approach the market and the things that you've done, and just transitioning older homes and giving them new life. It's kind of a fun thing. So I really wanted to talk to you about that, and I appreciate you taking the time today to go through that with me.
Thanks. Absolutely.
Yeah, great. All right. Have a great day.
Cool. Thanks, Mark.
All right, I'm going to have our panelists unmute themselves. So Andrea and Eric, if you guys can unmute, hopefully you can hear me okay. And Alex, we're going to come back to questions. So some great discussions we had today. And before I get started in the questions, if you do have a question, we've got a few so far, but if you do have a question, you can type it in the Q&A at the bottom right of your window. So first of all, Dalila, we've got a webinar coming up next month on something unique. I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Sure, thanks, Mark. So we are going to be talking about accessory dwelling units and how it is a big building trend that just came about in 2020. So we're going to be talking about that. That's going to be in April the 20th at 9 o'clock in the morning. And if you guys want to register for that, that is already up on the bmdusa.com website. Looking forward to that. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, Dalila. So let's jump in, Dalila. I know we've got some questions. I'll let you go ahead and feed that and see what we can address here.
Sure, great. Our first question for all the panelists, we have, in your opinion, what is the #1 remodeling request you are seeing? Anyone want to take that over?
I'll jump in. Hopefully you can hear me well, but just as I talked about, it's the large doors. That's still the biggest trend that we see as far as when we're invited to a discussion on a remodeling project, is making the space seem bigger. The existing space, you can make it bigger with more glass.
That's awesome.
That's really good. Those indoor-outdoor spaces and those large doors, that's a lot of what we're seeing. So, I'm spent a lot of time in the Midwest here. Obviously, Eric, you're in the Midwest, and Dalila, you're in California. Alex, you're in California. But the trend in California, we've seen those big open doors, and get that indoor-outdoor space, and it's really moving to the Midwest. The weather, we can have some mild weather when the months are right. So it is moving that way too. So that's a great point, Eric.
Yeah, to add Eric's point, a lot of the indoor and outdoor kitchens, people just utilizing their existing space. A term that I saw coined by Pinterest was a office, people converting their closets into office because we're limited in California. So I thought that was kind of interesting emerging trend.
Nice.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. Really an expansion into the outdoor space and doors and products that allow to do that. And then really actually taking that a step further. And we're seeing a lot of composite decking type projects that are being added to the outdoor space, really just expanding that living area.
Very good. All right.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, we do have a couple more questions. What platforms are you guys seeing when doing virtual consultations? How is with COVID, how has doing the virtual consultations, what are you guys using to do those?
For me, it's been about a 50-50 mix of Zoom and Teams. Those have been the predominant ones.
Same for me as well. I try to just be flexible, whatever people are more comfortable using. If they would like me to set it up, we use Microsoft Teams, but if a client is more comfortable with Zoom, whatever works best for them.
Sure.
Same here.
Yeah, it's great. Things have gotten a little bit easier. People are getting a little more familiar with things, but yeah, at least the user friendliness of these platforms getting better and better as we go.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And another question coming in, what type of remodeling tends to yield the highest return of investment for a home?
I mean, I still, it's always been kitchens and baths are where you get your most money. And I continue to hear that, we're still expanding those big kitchens or doing the outdoor kitchens. So, of course, I don't track the industry as a whole, but usually that's the tidbits that I hear when I'm sitting down with someone.
Yeah, and I guess I personally spend a lot of time in the kitchen, so I definitely understand the request for a lot of kitchen and living area remodels.
Well, and I came across an interesting stat as we were getting ready for this, and House did a study that 2 in 5 homeowners, which is 41%, who renovated their master bathroom, say they rely on their new space for rest and relaxation. So they're creating this oasis to get away from everything. So, that doesn't really speak to the, the ROI on that, but that kind of says what people are doing, right? And bathrooms and kitchens are big. But, Andrea, we talked about the door increasing the value of the home. You had some pretty good stats on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. That curb appeal investment seems to be, a big return for folks, and that can be anything from the exterior cladding all the way to the entry door and even landscape.
Hey, Dalila, I think we've got time for one more question.
Yeah, we got one more. So in your guys' opinion, is the trend of open floor plans reversing at all?
I think it's being reconsidered, right? I mean, we now need home office space. Your crying 4-year-old who's throwing a tantrum in the middle of a webinar, it's probably not the most ideal situation. So I think people are definitely reconsidering.
Yes, I would agree with Alex. We are seeing that, especially in the commercial spaces, you'd see that open collaborative feel, but residentially, there is a desire to find a way to shut off the elements if you can.
This has been great. I appreciate all the panelists' time. I think we had some great information here, and we'll make this information available on the website. We'll have the webinar recorded there, so you can view it later on or pass it on if you have somebody that might be interested. But thank you all for joining us. It was a nice time, well spent.
Thank you for having us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.